Hi, welcome back to Snap Media, and we're in episode 3 talking about the main highlights of the Temple Periodic Table graphic. I call it the PDT, and talking about the main highlights of it. So what we have, let's see, on the center here you have the Ark of the Covenant and the altar of incense. But I also put the pyramid in here, and that does not belong there. And you'll notice you have the same thing down on the bottom, and I got into that in the episode why. Because this represents the Nebuchadnezzar version, and this represents the Goliath version. And right today we work in this solar system arrangement here, and back before the flood, what they call the pre-Adamite world, when Lucifer was in charge, we were up on this end. So the candlestick in the center, there's a double. That doesn't belong there. And the reason I did these things is to get you to understand that whatever's on the center of the temple, right up the middle, let me get this to go right up the middle, just like that, right up the middle. It's a 1 divided by 2. And that's why hydrogen cannot be God. Because hydrogen, they're assigning it the value of the 1. And it's actually 0.5. So there's a main sticking point why modern programmers, the computer programming people, are having problems with the AI robotics, because the 0 thinks it's the 1. And this is going back to the basics. Why are we having these problems? Because you've never properly defined what a 1 represents and what a 0 represents. So you'll notice on this graphic you have a white, a blue, a teal, green, blue, and a black, the lithium, carbon, fluorine. That's your fine structure constant. Ready? Fine structure is the S for lithium, which is stone. So fir, stone, and cedar. Cedar represents carbon. And this is one of those things I tell you. John Anthony West would find these things in the Iliad and be stymied by them. And it threw me off too. Carbon is considered cedar or wood because it's explaining humans and how we are. And it goes to the man who Jesus healed. He was blind, and the first time he healed his eyes, he said, what's going on? And he's like, I see men as trees. And then he put a salve in his eyes, and he said, how about now? And he said, okay, now I see men as they truly are. And this gets into why he saw men as trees. Cedar and Kedar. Okay? K is the northern shafts, the Sisera shafts, northern side of the pyramid. And the C represents the southern side. Okay, and in here, I depicted the Great Pyramid. That was actually an abomination. That is something one of the ancient Israeli kings did. He brought this image into the Holy of Holies, and he defiled the sanctuary. And this is, in essence, what he was doing is he was putting the stone that King David lodged in Goliath's forehead into the Holy of Holies. And why was that wrong? It's wrong because, first of all, nothing unclean or molten images or carved images belong in the holy place. Only the temple instruments that Solomon, that was ordained under the building of the temple, were allowed in there. But anyway, I don't want to get off on that. I just want to tell you this does not belong in there. And that's a very important point because people are going to find fault and say, oh, look at he's got things in there, don't belong there. And here's another one. There's the shewbread underneath the lamp. It's called the candlestick, but it was actually an oil lamp. The lamp belonged on this side and the shewbread on this side, but because you have a double image, you have it on both sides. Okay, so I did things to get your mind to work a certain way. Now notice the colors on these, black, teal, or blue-green, and the white. I have it here, here, and here, and here, here, and here, and here, here, and here. That's the fine structure constant. This whole thing represents a, an olive tree. Olive trees don't die, they just keep producing bark outside of itself. And I guess there are olive trees in Israel that are 1,000 years old. And I guess it's the Cambrian layer is the bark. And what you're seeing here is this is the original, this is the outer, and this is the far outer of the Cambrian layer. And that is also, each one of these halves when you double the image and you get one of the graphics I'll show you very soon, call it the chalice or Pharaoh's cup. You could call it the Holy Grail, but it's Jachin and Boaz in the form of these doubled, reverse mirror imaged, and they form a cup. But they form also the two olive trees, which is why I depicted this one split in two. Okay, because Jesus would be sitting in the center of these two, and those would be the two olive trees before God. They represent the two hemispheres of your brain, the two hemispheres of the planet Earth. They represent a lot of things. Okay, and the fine structure constant is the well at Behurim. If you look at this element, it's barium. And barium is 138, roughly 137. People are going to find fault and say, oh, it's only 137. It doesn't matter if you divide 137 times or 138 times. You're going to get an approximation to the weight of hydrogen, which is 0.007. Okay, it's the spy. Okay, it's James Bond. Just like Jim Morrison said, I'm a spy in the what? This is the house of love. I know the dreams that you're dreaming of. Okay, and I show you this is a bed. Okay, Jacob's asleep on it. This is Og. There's Ognesium, King Og. If you follow the biblical narrative, it's all found in the periodic table. You just have to understand a few principles in order to get there. And people are going to find fault with the way that I've come to these conclusions. Let them. They're going to hate on me for the next 10 or 20 years. Let them. I don't care. Same thing happened with Einstein with E equals mc squared. It took 20 years for him to get the Nobel Peace Prize. Good for him. He made $50,000. He ended up giving it to his first wife. But anyway, you got the numbers here for the measurements of the house. All right. I got this written as Rachel and Leah. Okay. That's just another way to look at it. Okay. Right and left. You say, well, that's on the right side and that's on the left. Yes, but if you're looking from this direction over here, it's the opposite. Okay, so if you notice that and you're finding fault, good for you, because I do have that backwards. But anyway, these represent electric motors. And this whole temple represents, like I was saying in an earlier video, this is your combustion, right? You got your intake, your combustion, that altar of incense, where they burn the incense, that's your source of ignition. In here is your compression, and then your combustion, compression, and then you end up with your exhaust, and that's how you end up with the priestly cells. Was there a gap here in the original temple? No, there's not. But you'll notice these are the noble gases, and what are they? They represent, see, helium, that's our sun. Okay, so in today's world, the helium is technically down here, which is why I say in some depictions, King Nebuchadnezzar was the head of gold. That is the old system, where Neptune was our solar system's head. Okay, and it was a very aquatic system back then. And a lot of people talk about the aquatic ape theory and all this. Do I believe it? That's all I can say. But there's a couple other aspects I want to point out before I go off on tangents. One of them is P or CH. You got the P15 and the C6H. All right, that's the porch where the two pillars sat, Jachin and Boaz, which means your shin bones. And this represents phosphate, and that represents sugar. Okay, and I have another graphic where I show technically on one half of your DNA, it's inorganic, and the other half is organic. Okay, they're identical elements, but one's a strictly inorganic version, and the other is like a water-soluble type. People call that soft elements and hard elements. Whether I agree with that, that's neither here nor there. But one represents back in Nebuchadnezzar's day, or when Lucifer was God's friend, before Adam and Eve, the pre-Adamite world. And that would be the phosphate. And then the CNH represents afterwards the sugar. This is the sugar, that's the phosphate. Okay, and that sugar gets into Samson the strongman, who is Hercules, and Gilgamesh. But Samson found honey in the carcass of the lion that he killed. And what did he do? He handed it to his two parents. Okay, so he represents either east-west or east-west together, the rotation of the earth. And his parents are who? Adam and Eve, even though his father's name was Manoah. Okay, his father's name is extracted from the name Noah. Okay, you could call him Utnapishtim. That's what the Sumerians. Same guy. Who's Utnapishtim? There's Enlil and Anu. He would be Anu. And people will argue, oh no, they're different people. No, that's what this whole exercise is to get you to realize it's Russian dolls. All these ancient symbols are hidden one inside the other. Utnapishtim, Noah, is Adam. Once you realize they have to go on the cross of the compass rose, north, south, east, or west, they have to fit in that pattern. So where do they best fit? Well, Utnapishtim, Noah, and Adam are all north. King Nebuchadnezzar, he has an N in his name for a reason. He represents north, okay? So once you make all these connections, you realize it always goes back to a 1 and a 0. It always goes back to north, south, east, west, strong force, weak force, electromagnetic force, gravity, solid, liquid, gas, plasma. They're all iterations of each other. And by the way, those are ATGC. This one took me, believe me, it was like a leap of faith getting to this. But I realized, yeah, that is true. ATGC is north, south, east, west. They are all connected, and they are all Russian dolls inside of each other. And once you understand how they are connected, it makes perfect sense. And we take things and we make them way, way harder than they are. But anyway, these are something I haven't touched on earlier. These are the 5 lavers outside the temple. And these 5 lavers is where they got the water from here, and they filled these and they washed the sacrifices that were done on the brass altar. Okay, and I got the altar depicted with, there was only one ramp leading up to it. Okay, and I always double anything. So don't be confused by that, because there was only one. And you'll notice here it's left, right. Here it's up, down. Okay, and the reason is every time you double something, you come up with a double image that's a reverse of itself. So that's why it's this way, because I don't know which way the ramp was. Nobody does. The Bible doesn't specifically say where the ramp leading up. They were not allowed to walk upstairs. They had to have a ramp so that the priest could go up to the big barbecue grill. But anyway, this represents the spiral staircase. And you got your 5, 6, and 7, okay, which is another version of the 3, 6, and 9. They're all connected to each other. There's the center line, which is your 3, 6, 9. Then the outer one is Moses and Enoch. Okay, technetium is Enoch. So this is why in the Garden of Gethsemane, let me think. No, during the Transfiguration on Mount Hermon, I believe, Jesus was transfigured, and Moses showed up with who? He showed up with this guy, Prometheum. Who's Prometheum? He stole fire from the gods. Who's that? That's the prophet Elijah. Not Elisha, Elijah. Elisha is the female version of Elijah. Okay, so one represents the patriarchal and the other the matriarchal. And a lot of Christians are going to fight against this. But this is the truth, that Elijah approached things from a guy's approach, and he didn't have the touch, okay? He lacked this certain touch, and Elisha nailed it. Elisha was very harmonic, and he did, I think 7 times, he had 7 times the spirit of Elijah. So this gets into a lot of things in the Bible narrative where, like Lamech, he had 2 wives, Ada and Zillah, and he said, a guy hurt me. And he said, if God said anyone who touches Cain after Cain killed his brother, he will be cursed X amount. He said, well, I'm going to be 7 times that amount if anyone touches me, because he was being self-righteous. He got into a fight. He killed a younger man. And I don't want to get into that. That's actually a lot of information for another day. There's a lot on that bone. Who Lamech equals. He has, there's versions of who Lamech is. But anyway, let's stay on focus here, which is the temple. Can't really think of anything else. This gets into the current day metals that are associated with Nebuchadnezzar's image. Okay, and that's why I depict copper, zinc. that's brass. So the sun is either gold, pure gold, Au, the element Au, or it's Cuzn, okay? So then I get into Venus being Cu, which is copper. Mercury is Ag, and that's the chest and arms of silver. Belly and thighs of brass is Venus. The head of gold, now you have to know your Bible in order before you start saying, oh yeah, the head of gold is always the sun. Well, you got to know the sun existed in the form of Nebuchadnezzar, who was Neptune, and it's in the form of Goliath, the helmet of brass. So you got the two legs of iron representing Mars. And the reason there's two legs, in the days of Peleg, the earth was divided. And Peleg had a brother, Joktan, Joktan, or Yoktan. And they represent this. Now you notice like this represents your H2O molecule. You got your center, which would be your oxygen with your two hydrogen. Okay, and then it does it again this way, center, and then you get two pillars here and here. Well, Molech is this god that they worshipped in the Old Testament. And that's where molecular biology and, molecules, it comes from that. And this gets into a lot of things. There's a lot to unwrap on that, what Molech is. And it's, the basic message about Molech is anyone who puts their trust in science, okay? Science will take you so far. It's very important. I'm not bashing science and math. They're both critical. And Christians get accused of, oh, we're all into being mystics, and there's no science in math. That's all hogwash. Christians are very mathematical. They're very scientific, and they work within that framework. And it's actually the Luciferians that get people to believe in that lie. And it's the Luciferians working behind the scenes that actually are the ones that are the mystics, okay? And they don't want you to know that at the very top of these college education systems, this college university structure, are these old pagans that came in from the old world. They walked right in the front door and took the seats of prominence after, during the Roman Empire and after the fall of Rome and to our current day. And they are working behind the scenes to make sure there's things here, pretty much everything you see here, they don't ever want you to realize. They never want you to make the connection that, hey, wait a minute. When Joshua said, sun, stand thou still in the valley of Ajalon, and moon, which is selenium, in Gibeah. This is Gibeah. Why it's called Gibeah, I could get into that. That's a whole other episode. But God told Job, he said, the face of the deep is frozen. He means several things by that. He said the face of the periodic table is frozen in time. And what Joshua did is right here. Okay? So I want to wrap it up. I'm going to close it out. We've pretty much covered everything on this whole thing. I just got into why I do the double image thing and how this is wrong. That's a big main sticking point. People are going to find fault. Oh, you put the pyramid like the king of Israel. You defiled the holy place. No, I didn't do it. I'm not saying this is church dogma, church doctrine. I'm saying this is level one. This is the beginning, and people are going to improve on this system. And I apologize for having to do these things, but it gets the point across, okay, that you're doubling the image. So you're going to get a mirror image of other things, like the ramp and the candlesticks and the shewbread and why I split the center candlestick. All right, I just wanted to go over the main points here in episode 3, and we're going to leave it at that. I thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to hit the like button, and have a good day.